Hi, guys. Welcome to Jump School. I'm your host, Ihsaan, the StyleJumper, and I have a special guest today. This is one of the most important people in my life, a mentor, a coach, a big brother, someone that taught me so much about life. His name is Mr. Tim Jones. Tim, welcome to Jump School.
I am very glad and proud to be here. It's an honor to speak with you today, Mr. Ihsaan, and you mean a lot to me as well. I can't say how much because it's just words don't tell the whole story. But I'm definitely good to hear you, and I'm looking forward to this interview.
Awesome. I feel exactly the same way. So I wanted us to start off by, letting everyone know where you grew up, what your family life was like when you were young.
Okay, so I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, Topeka, Kansas, and grew up the youngest of 17 children, believe it or not. My dad was a minister, Reverend Marion Eugene Jones, and my mom was an evangelist, missionary Eleanor Gladys Jones. And it was pretty amazing growing up in a household, like I said, with actually 13 of my siblings when I came along.
Wow.
My dad was actually 64 years old when I was born. So in terms of age, he was almost like a grandfather to me. But, in terms of personality, he was definitely the big pastor, father figure. Made sure that we, didn't, even though we grew up, I would say now I look back, I could say we were poor, but never had that sense of being poor because our life was so fulfilling with the example that my parents set in terms of, taking care of others, always being a giving type spirit and personality, always having someone around in the home that we were helping and assisting, and setting that type of environment growing up allowed me to, have a real sense of belonging, family, security, carefreeness that, I thank God that I had that opportunity to experience that because, a lot of people don't get that. But like I said, with 13 in the home, we went through some pretty amazing things. The standard rivalries among siblings, but I would say a very loving, very solid foundation that allowed me to become the man I am today. I wouldn't trade anything and do anything differently than, that I experienced.
So that's amazing because you mentioned before the call that two things. One, you were the youngest of 17. Is that correct? And when was your father born again? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, my dad was actually born in 1896. He was 64 when I was born. So
amazing.
He lived an amazing life. And you can imagine the things that he's seen and all the changes he had to experience in his lifetime. Actually went into the Army, so spent time in the Army, military. When I left Kansas, I actually joined the Navy, the submarine service, which is where, I ran into you, of course. And looking back, I would say the influence of the military from my father, and I had older brothers that went into the Navy. That gave me a vision of being able to leave and, expand my frontier and see what other opportunities there were for me outside of Kansas. So
yeah,
that gave me a big influence to go into the Navy, which I'm very glad I did because I had some awesome times in the Navy and met amazing friends that, I still stay in touch with to this day. So
that's spectacular. One thing else we talked about that you and I share in common that I didn't realize is you lost your mom at a very young age at 9 years old. And so did my mom. My mom lost actually her father at 9 years old. And she's the baby of 10. So how did that impact you? I'm really curious to know how did that impact you and, who took on that role as, you managed and shifted with, the loss of your mom at such an early age?
That's a really good question. And looking back, like I said, with my older siblings, my sister Faith is like the heart of the family. She's an amazing woman. She basically was able to step into that role. So me growing up, I just my mom was there. Not really, by the time when you're 9, growing up to 9 years old, you see your mom, she's there. You just kind of always expect them to be there. But by the time I became aware of, developing a relationship and kind of really getting to know my mom, at 9, then she passed. But, it was not a void for me because, like I said, my older siblings, they made sure that they rallied around all of us younger ones. I'm in what we call the 4 little ones, the 4 youngest, we call the 4 little ones.
Got it.
And then my sister Faye, she's in the 4 older ones. And then we have 5 in the middle of the 13 that grew up in the house with me. The 4 other brothers, they 2 had passed on by the time I came along. But
okay.
I got a chance to know a little bit. But like I said, growing up with so many, you just kind of take people for granted. And you just be there. But then, time passes on and people pass on. And then it's like you have a sense of loss. But fortunately, when my mom passed, we had so many family and friends because of all the relationships that my parents had developed over the years. At my church family, they just rallied around us and embraced us, held us. And it was almost like my mom never passed. I had godmother, Missionary Stanley, and Reverend Stanley, my godfather.
Yeah.
We used to spend, I never understood. My mom and dad used to always make me go over their house on Sunday and gave me a sense of doing more than just playing, being involved with something more than just myself. And I used to go over there and help her clean and she would cook on Sundays and, I always had some little chores, but they treated me like I was their son. And I got so much stuff from them. It was just amazing growing up that I almost felt like I had two sets of parents.
Well, that's spectacular to have so many people to just pour in you like that, and this net wasn't just something that happened randomly. It sounds like it was, it was a habit that you were always there and getting that support and love that you needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was amazing because, I never had a sense of loss of my mom. I had a sense that, I missed her. But like I said, with so many people that embraced me and my family and loved us to the nth degree where it was like a beat, just skip a beat and keep going. So, that's something I always cherish and look back on. I can look back at old photos nowadays and see the church family. And I can still call, from Missionary Calloway, Sister Gray, the Sister Stanley, Calloway. It's just like all those people were part of my life growing up. So, I had a lot of moms.
I'm sitting here, envisioning, what that was like, growing up in the church and being, the little one in the house with a large family as well. And, I always tell people, my mom being that she was the youngest of 10 and there were 7 girls, I felt like I had, 7 to 8 moms, you know what I mean? Because grandma was one of the mamas and then all my mom's sisters plus the sister-in-law. So I always had somebody to be, to listen to, someone to learn something from, and they all impact me in so many different ways. Who would you say, really inspired you the most as a young man?
Undoubtedly, my father was my biggest influence. I always used to look at my dad in amazement and think about all the things that he had to adjust to in his lifetime growing up from, when you just say born in 1896 to this day, when people look at me and say, ask me about my family and where I grew up, and I tell them about my dad. Yeah. The first person I always speak about is my dad because, what an amazing life. You're talking about born in 1896, and he was able to work the majority of his life, probably about until 4 months until he passed away. He always was on the go, had endless energy. And when he passed, he actually, I think about his upbringing and from humble beginnings to being able to leave, 4 homes for his kids and properties. And, and like I said, growing up, we never wanted for anything. I would have never known until I had something when I left Kansas to really compare my family to.
Sure.
The fact that, we were really poor. But never having that sense of being poor because we have so much that was given to us in terms of spirit and energy and things like that from my dad, that he was definitely the most influential person in my life.
We share so many things, in common. And I think about, there's a lot of men in my life that influenced me as a young child, but just thinking about, the richness that was poured constantly, and then not knowing, I was the polar opposite. I had very young parents, and, I didn't realize until I left home, really how much we were struggling, or my parents were struggling. But I never wanted for anything. They did their best for me. And, it was I was a child of the village. So there's not a time where I didn't feel like I was loved. There wasn't a time where the lights was turned off or we didn't have food to eat. We were always, nestled at my grandmother's house was the central point of the family. So growing up, I spent a lot of time there with my grandmother and then all her children. And so I'm just sitting here in awe and imagining what it was like for you as a young child. But were there any type of, limited beliefs or things you struggled with growing up, as you came up as an adult, when you decided to leave? You went to the Navy, and obviously at the influence of your brothers, as well as your dad being a military man as well. What was maybe some limiting beliefs you might have had, and also, what was the catalyst for you making that decision to move away and join the Navy?
Yeah, great question. It was pretty amazing. Like I said, my mom, missionary Jones, she gave us growing up just like a sense of non-judgmental spirit. We always had, I called our house the United Nations.
Okay.
If there was someone in need, no matter what race, color, creed, sexual preference, you name it, my mom was so giving, so understanding that, it's almost like she raised the community there. And so I had that opportunity to experience no judgments growing up. So, and that was like just a living example. Like I said, not only from my mom, but also my dad, just the way they were so accepting of any type of person, that I really didn't have a lot of misgivings about people. And when I met people, I just learned to accept them for who they are. And that's an amazing blessing when I look back now to think, because when I did leave Kansas and go to the military, which, my dad always told us to follow our dreams, and like I said, my two brothers that went to the Navy ahead of me, it was always such a big event when they came home to visit from the Navy. Yeah. You actually, in Kansas, you actually went out to meet the planes on the runway.
Oh, wow.
My sister, Faith, who I told you she's the heartbeat of the family, she would make us all sailor suits. And, we would be out there with American flags. And my dad was very patriotic, not only God-fearing, but very loyal to country and family. But it was always such a big deal when they came home from the Navy. That influenced me to want to be, do something like that when I grew up. So yeah, it was always in my sights. It was just like, but then when I went to the Navy, because my brothers were both in the surface Navy, I was just like, well, I don't want to do what they did. I want to do something different. So I decided, when I asked that question and when I went to the recruiting, I said, what's different in the Navy that most Black men don't do? And he was like, well, there's very few Black men that like to go into the submarine service. That sparked my interest, because it's like, I want to be unique. That's just my personality. I've always been the one to be different, but, so that's what I shot for. I wanted to be in the submarine service. But, going back to the question of, what reservations, I can say I was truly blessed that allowed me to grow up without having a fear of, concern about any stigmas that people might, or blocks people would try to put on you because of the way my mom raised us. So, I would say I look back, I had very few reservations. It wasn't like it was, I'm leaving home. I'm
Yeah,
just going to do something different that I wanted to do, which is what my dad always said, follow your dream.
sure.
So, that my brothers influenced me to the Navy. My dad, motivated me to, when I was ready to make that decision to go ahead and challenge myself to do what I wanted to do. And my mom gave us that sense of, being confident in the world and trusting in people enough to know that you don't have to have reservations. Just when you treat people right and you have your heart in the right place, good things happen. And
Hmm.
that's kind of how I've always lived.
You know what, you you describing this, and I'm getting chills because this is the person that I met, and you talked about your older brothers, and it was such a big deal when they came home. And I'm sure they had their uniforms on. And I remember one of the influences and the reasons why the Navy was a default setting for me as well, because not only that it was a big deal when my uncle would come home, in his dress uniform, all white,
Mm-hmm.
um, but he was also a sub, he was also a part of the submarine Navy as well. So he was a sub chief, and being on the East Coast, he was going to Europe. So I would get these postcards, from all around the world, and I would just read them, or my aunts would read them to me, and my mom, and I would just imagine, like, wow, he's in the Mediterranean, where is that, and I would just imagine in my mind what it would be like to travel under the sea, and
I can relate. My brothers used to send pictures of being on the ship, and I see all
yeah.
the water and my brother Ray, who was he's the second oldest boy in out of the 13 that I grew up with, and he would send home videos from the Navy,
Hmm.
and I mean we would get such a kick out of those videos. And it was just like, okay, the Navy is the place to be. So that's what I grew up with. So I can definitely relate to the postcards because it was pretty amazing to see some of the things. And at the time, believe it or not, when they were in, the Navy was actually segregated.
Huh. What was that like?
Uh, but see, and that's what's pretty amazing. Like I said, the way we were raised, and
Mhm.
I think back now, my two older brothers, Russell, he was the oldest boy of the 13, and Ray, they were in the Navy that was segregated, but they never talked about that.
Hmm.
They didn't let that interfere with their goals and impact their mindset or make them bitter or anything like that. It was just like, I remember seeing on his video how he interacted with people of all different colors. And I wouldn't, until they told us, I wouldn't have known the Navy was segregated. That's pretty
Hmm.
amazing. But it was, I come to learn that when I went into the Navy, but the way that they carried themselves, and I think it had to do with the way we were raised,
Sure.
that wasn't even an obstacle. It wasn't something that they focused on.
It wasn't a topic of discussion. It was more of the experience, the travel, the leaving small town, Topeka in the middle of the country, the Rust Belt, if you will, and just really experiencing life and traveling throughout the world. When it comes to, the Navy, what did you do? And what would you say the biggest thing that impacted you about the Navy to help you even further become the man that you are today?
But when I first went to the Navy, it was pretty amazing to see, um, how the structure was, and when you go to boot camp, of course, it's like, oh, what decision did I make? What did I get myself into?
Where did you go for boot camp? I was in Great Lakes.
She went in San Diego, California. It was like you either go, when my recruiter called me, said you can go now in '79 when he called me and said, or if you can delay for 6 months, you can go now and go to San Diego, or you can wait 6 months and you go to Chicago. And the only thing I knew about Chicago was it was cold.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm going now to San Diego. I'm by the coast and it's warm. So
Yes.
I went to San Diego. At the time, it was the Navy and the Marine base next
Yep.
to it. But, you know, the structure was pretty amazing. It wasn't nothing that I looked at as a challenge. I looked at boot camp as a stepping stone. And like I
Hmm.
said, that goes back to my upbringing. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, okay, this is the final stop, even though, you went through it. So a lot of guys go into the Navy and it's like boot camp is a wall to them. They run into a wall.
Yes.
in the way, and I'm probably sure you can relate based on your upbringing. I looked at it as, okay, this is my first step, not
Yep.
a wall. This is my first step. And now I get a chance to acclimate myself to the culture and set myself up for, being successful in the Navy, because that was my mindset. I'm not going to fail. I want to be successful. And that's the way I looked at it. So it was pretty amazing time.
Exactly the way that I saw it too, Tim. Leaving home, I was a little bit older. I was 21 when I left, but I knew that the most important thing for me was to have the best attitude possible, right? You have a great attitude and there's the great outcomes that come from that. And I went in boot camp, you have your ranks in boot camp. You can be Master at Arms, you can be the RPOC, the person who's in charge of the whole division as far as a recruit, and then the second person in command, the AROC, which was the guy.
I was actually what we called brigade staff at the time. We were the 9 people that led the graduation, which you probably remember.
Yeah.
We basically was our little 9-person platoon that walked around and practiced with our sabers, and just what we did was basically practice on how to lead the graduation.
Oh man, I used to love seeing those guys. You guys were legit. You guys, you look at those guys like, man, they're like the elite.
Yep, I was like pretty amazed because I seen the saber. I was like, what are those guys? They're brigade staff. I'm like, how do you become brigade staff? When my drill instructor, he was like, all right, you want to do this? You had to be stellar in your first, the first part of boot camp where you're doing what everyone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
You had to shine to be picked for brigade staff. So that was my goal. I'm like, I'm going to make it to brigade staff, because after that first 4 weeks, you're doing nothing but drilling for graduation. So
yes, just getting acclimated. You finally acclimated into the process, and you prepping for graduation, and learning a little bit about what you might be doing afterwards. I ended up being the AROC, the second person in command, the one that was singing the cadence as we marched. So, I knew that I wanted to have a leadership role, and those were the roles, the 3 major roles in the division at the time, which was, AROC, RPOC, and Master at Arms. So I was really happy. I was
pretty amazing that we had that in common all the way back.
It is. And, hearing it is just, I got this huge smile on my face. So one of the things I want to talk about is, and for those of you who don't know the ranking of the Navy, you were a chief fairly young, and you pretty much articulated your mindset as far as like you really being focused on being your best. But what would you say is one of the biggest catalysts for you to exceed and excel at such a young age to become a chief, which, most people don't have that goal in sight, but also not in such a short time span. And for those of you who don't know, chief is one who would, one that would be in charge, and usually you'd be in the Navy for years and years and years to become, high ranking. And Tim was one of the individuals who was ranked as a chief fairly young. So how was that experience?
That was awesome and amazing. That, like you said, you have to have the mindset to accelerate and achieve. You can't waste any time when you're, trying to make it to the upper ranks of the military, because like you said, it usually takes years. One benefit I had going for me was the submarine service. We got accelerated training. So that was another reason that I, kind of looked forward to sub service, because one of the first chiefs that I recall seeing in the Navy was a submariner that had one red stripe on his arm sleeve. And for those people that don't know, you get a red stripe for every 4 years you go without having any kind of conduct issues.
Yeah.
So this guy had a red stripe. His next stripe, to get his second red stripe, he would have had to make 8 years. Well, he had in 6 years, is when I spoke with the gentleman. He had been in 6 years, he was a new chief, a nuclear power chief in the Navy. And I'm like, how did you make chief so young? Mm-hmm. He's like, you really got to focus, and being in the sub-service, you get so much training that, when it comes to taking those advancement exams, you are so in tune with learning and training that, most of those guys would zoom right through those chief exams. So I was just like, that's my goal. I said, my goal was I want to be a chief with one red hash mark, but I didn't make that mark. But it took me 9 years. My
Okay.
rank in supply and chief, the average was about 14 years. So
Okay.
I beat that mark of, well ahead of 14 years. So people were pretty amazed to see me, like you said, when, I didn't look uh, old enough to be a chief. And when I was in my uniform, they would be like, I can't believe you're a chief. And I used to get that question all the time, especially we work out a lot in the military, and I would go
Yeah.
to on a regular basis. And, after I go get through working out and go into the locker room, I
Yep.
always would get questioned why I was in the chief's locker room because people look old enough to be a chief.
Exactly. We'll have to talk. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. I'm really excited about that.
But yeah, it was a combination of really just staying focused and making sure that you hang out with the right people. A lot of people go in the military, and just like any other area of life, they can mess around and waste time. But
Sure.
you have to stay focused and know what your goals are. I said, I want to be a chief as soon as possible because either you're going to be in charge or you're going to be under someone that's in charge. So I was just like, I would rather be the one making the decisions if I had to be in any one of those positions.
Well, Tim, you had, now guys and gals, listen, like you have to picture this man, excellent shape, dark chocolate brother, sparkling white teeth, had a high top fade and a beard. And a beard was one of the things that you don't usually see in the Navy and in the military. And so seeing Tim with his beard, it just blew me away. He just seemed so statuesque. It was just like, it was like seeing a movie star. But I'll touch base on that again. But at what point did you get into modeling? Can you talk about
Actually, yeah, that was it wasn't that I wanted to pursue modeling, but it just happened because I had other interests that uh, gave me the opportunity to be, in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, being a young chief in the Navy, I was always involved with, like growing up in Kansas, we were always involved with the community and doing things for other people. So, of course, when I left home, in my one of the things my dad left me with when I left Kansas, he's like, always associate yourself with your comfort zone. You grew up around a loving family. So when you leave Kansas, you associate with those type of people.
Sure.
Find yourself a nice family to associate. So everywhere I was in the Navy, I initially was in San Diego, Charleston. I always affiliated myself with a family that reminded me of my roots. Mm-hmm. And so when I was in San Diego, I had the opportunity to get to know a very good friend that passed on now. I rest his soul, but Kevin Manor, and I was affiliated with this family, Miss June Lynch in Los Angeles, because I was actually on the base, and Kevin, we become friends, and he was like, "Well, what are you doing?" It was around Thanksgiving. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, I'm just going to chill on the base. And he's like, "Well, you'd be more than welcome to come to Los Angeles and, spend Thanksgiving with my family." So I did that, and that allowed me to ground myself. And when I was in San Diego, the same thing. I associated myself with good people, good families. And that got me into doing things within the community. So the modeling came about when I was out doing a community event, and I was actually, it was in one of the parks in San Diego. They had a rally going on, and it was a Mr. Black America Association. They were doing a event for the community, and they had a gentleman there that was Mr. Black San Diego at the time. And so I'm like very curious. I'm like, what is this Mr. Black San Diego? This young man looks very, well dressed, carried himself very well, was up speaking to the crowd, and it just piqued my interest. So I got involved with that organization, and that kind of led to the role, the title of Mr. Black San Diego. This was 1991.
Okay.
So I actually, was influenced to run for Mr. Black San Diego and actually won that title. And so from there, that was a launching platform to get involved with modeling, because as Mr. Black San Diego, we did a lot of community events and things that, you role model, making sure that you're, impacting children and things around the community. So I started getting invited to modeling shows, they wanted me to be a guest model in shows and stuff. So that's how that came about, where all of a sudden I find myself not only doing modeling on shows, but also getting invited to do some print work. I did an event with, this was a real curious thing. Paul Mitchell at the time was doing a hair book for Black men, Black women, first time. And so I got invited to be one of the models in that hair book. And so those type of things came about just because of my interest of being involved in the community. And so that was one advantage that, I had the opportunity to get into the modeling aspect.
Well, it just goes to show, when you're being your best self and you're being who you are, those opportunities come your way. And also that you were constantly curious and being, excellent in everything that you do, or at least focus on being excellent in everything you do. Obviously, you're in great shape, great communicator, a leader, not only, from the onset, from growing up at home and wanting to be involved in the community, but also, on the ship, and in the military, and all those things. It was sounds like a great, building block for you to go into something that, fell in your lap, give or take, if you will, of becoming Mr. Black San Diego. Now, one of the things that you talked about a little bit earlier about looking very young and being achieved, what do you recall about the day we met? And how did that scenario come about?
That takes me back, but I remember it was you, and you had a friend. Now that I know, at the time I didn't know, but you guys actually grew up in the same, y'all had the same name.
Yep.
And, you guys were on the same ship.
Yes.
And at the time, I think, I know how you describe me, very statuesque, in shape, chocolate, I could say the same thing about you. And I was just like, who's this young brother? There's something about you that just piqued my interest. And we were in the gym, and I was coming out of the Chiefs. No, actually, I was in the locker room. This was one of the ones where they had a kind of shared locker area. And I think I was getting dressed in my uniform. And I remember you were looking at me because the look on your face was like, this guy's a Chief.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because at the time I was with another friend of mine who was a very young senior Chief as well, Joe Murphy. And I just remember the look on your face. I said, let me speak to this young brother, because at the time we was teaching the Navy leadership at the time.
Okay.
And so I was always in tune, because as a master trainer in the Navy, we had a lot of opportunity to have impact on not only young Black men in the Navy, but just young men and young people in general, to make sure that they were staying focused and accomplishing things. So I just remember the look on your face that I was just like, let me speak to this young brother. And I think if I remember right, the first thing he was like, man, are you a Chief? You asked me something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it was just funny. I got a chuckle out of that because, at the time I had got a lot of that because, like I said, I always got challenged by that. So many people that, why are you in the Chiefs locker room?
Exactly.
So it was pretty amazing. I recall back that it's something that we just immediately hit it off.
Yeah.
And, it's almost like we have been knowing each other our entire lives, even though that was the first time we met. And then at the time, because I remember I don't think you had you had the interest in modeling, but you didn't have any of the connections. And I was like,
right,
you need to be in modeling. Because at the time I had also done some, because of my affiliations with what I was doing with modeling, it was a company that asked me to do some scouting for them. And then I have my photographer, David Stennett.
Yep.
And I was just like, David's amazing with the camera. And when I seen you, I was like, he needs to shoot you. Because this brother's work, if you don't know, you probably will know, but he was such a bad dude with that camera. And it's just like, and I remember looking at you going, you need to be in front of a camera. And so we just kind of hit it off because I think the conversation just flowed after that.
It did. And it's funny because now your recollection changes a little bit from what I remember, because I was thinking, and Rod and I talked about it, and Rod is my best friend. We were thinking that you came out of the Chiefs locker room, but I guess you didn't. You were getting dressed. And to your point, we were just in shock. And I just remember he and I like nudging each other like, man, that dude a Chief, and we were like, well, are you a Chief? How did you become a Chief? We just really wanted to know. It's because we were so focused on being in great shape, being, what we call Joe Navy, squared away sailors. We wanted to know, like, what was your secret? I'm like, well, what do you do? You got the secret sauce. We want to, and I remember.
It was just a question of the look that you had, you and Rod, that, it was the same. You didn't ask me the question, but y'all had the look of the question on your face. Was
okay.
You're a Chief, and it was so funny. I just remember that. It's like, okay, they're not even asking me that question, but that look is on their face. It's like, why are you in the Chiefs uniform?
Exactly. And it's funny you say that, because I felt like we said that, but maybe we were just thinking it so much, and we talked about it after, leaving the gym, and we were just so astounded in amazement at you. And I just was, I had wanted to become a model. It was something that I had dreamed about in small town South Carolina. Knew that there was no chance for me to ever do that. And when you let us know, and you said to me that, hey, this is something that you think I should consider, and I was just so ecstatic. And for those who are listening, it was like a month from the time that we met until the time that he took me to meet with David Stennett. And for those is to mention that don't know about how amazing he is, and he was the marketing mind behind the iconic streetwear brand, Cross Colors, but also was the person who, in all intents and purposes, from my understanding, was the introduction to Jaimin Hansu to the world. And Jaimin Hansu from Amistad and, Fast and the Furious and countless other films over the years. But David was the person who shot him. And, he was the first person to shoot me as a photographer. And, him as the years went by and the months went by, I've never asked you this, but, what was it about me for you to, spend basically an hour and a half one way to pick me up and take me back to, to Buena Vista, and then be going into LA, and just, you basically adopted me as your little brother and son, autism purposes. And, we did that for quite some time. And what was it that you saw? I mean, we had so many conversations, and, I just learned so much. And you just
well, I tell you one thing that, like growing up, one of the blessings that I had was, to discern spirits. And your spirit was, and you can just look at your life now, that in the same thing that I felt from the time I met you, is your spirit was just a loving, caring, unselfish, giving spirit. And like I said, my thing that my dad told me about how I need to associate myself with the type of people that I'm accustomed to and the type of personalities that will feed my spirit. And that's what you did. I mean, it wasn't what you said, or anything like that. It was just like our spirits connected.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is somebody I need to have in my circle. And, we had that interest, that common interest of modeling. And I knew, me being a chief and a young, chief in the Navy, having the opportunity to be in Navy leadership and, having that experience of becoming Mr. Black San Diego, which platformed into a national, I don't think I mentioned, winning the S-Girl title the same year I had Mr. Black San Diego. So it was just being able to utilize all my blessings to help you achieve a goal that you had. And the fact that our spirits were so connected, and I knew that you were someone that I would want to associate myself with. That's why, I think the attraction happened, and the fact that, we were able to feed each other in terms of pushing each other to accomplish things. Because the more you became successful in modeling, I'm like, this brother needs to be working. That's what, it's called in the modeling world. And so it's like I have the connections. I was blessed to meet the right people in LA by the grace of God. And I said, I need to pass those blessings along. And when I, meet people that I can help, like I said, that goes all the way back to my upbringing. It's like, I'm going to do that. And it's like, I'm in the place where I can introduce you to the right people to help you achieve your goals. We had the Navy in common, we're brothers in arms. So it was just a blessing to be able to do that.
And I'm so, when you started the call and we were talking, just words can't articulate, the lessons I learned, the wisdom that was given, and the love that was shared, fellowship and brotherhood over those years. And I don't even remember what year the Navy I was in. I don't remember, the time just flew by, and we spent so much time together over the years. And actually, until you end up moving from Los Angeles, it's really, really impacted my life. And I just want to thank you publicly, but also spiritually, man. It's just been an honor, and I'm so grateful for all these years we've stayed in touch. And I've learned so much about being a man.
It's definitely mutual feeling, man. Because it's not often that you are able to really call people friends. You can say people use that term loosely, but in my heart of hearts, when we and you say friend, it's something that goes beyond words. It's not just the word; it's in the heart.
Absolutely. Well, let me stop getting all teary-eyed here, and we're going to go to the second to the last segment, and this is something that I didn't prepare you for, but I'm really curious to get your answers. And I'm going to call this, and I've been calling this the creative Last Supper.
Oh, that's interesting.
So basically, we're going to do it's about 13 people, because obviously the Last Supper was 13 people. And you have to choose who would be in this 13 if you had the opportunity to have that Last Supper with these individuals. And some of this I've decided to use based on my knowledge of you, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. So we'll start with number one, George Benson or Al Jarreau?
Well, that's a difficult one. I would say Al Jarreau on that one.
Got it. Diane Carroll or Diana Ross?
Definitely, I had the opportunity to see Diana Ross in concert. She's an amazing woman. But I think Diane Carroll.
Billy D. Williams or Richard Roundtree?
Billy D. on that one.
Tina
kill me.
Tina Turner or Patti LaBelle?
Oh my goodness, Tina Turner.
Sidney Poitier or Harry Belafonte?
You're making it tough, bro.
There's some good ones.
Okay. Sidney Poitier.
James Baldwin or Langston Hughes?
Oh my goodness, Langston Hughes.
Miles Davis or John Coltrane?
John Coltrane. It's one of my favorites.
Mine too. You introduced me to smooth jazz. Michael or Prince?
Michael.
Toni Morrison or Terry McMillan?
Toni Morrison.
Stevie or Luther?
Stevie Wonder, without a doubt.
Janet or Sade?
Miss Sade.
My man. Wesley Snipes or Denzel Washington?
Mr. Denzel.
Whitney Houston or Anita Baker?
I miss Anita Baker. That's another concert I went to. That was probably the most amazing concert I ever went to.
Really? So it's going to be Anita?
It would be Anita Baker.
Phenomenal. That was tough, man, and it was good. I knew that list was a good list for you.
That was a good list. That was pretty amazing. I have to go back and you have to give me that list so I can.
I'll send it to you. All right. So, final question for you. If you could spend 24 hours with any creative, film, music, singing, acting, writing, so 24 hours of any creative, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Okay, this is pretty interesting question. But my Aunt Maud, she passed away a year ago. She was 103 years old. She would be the most creative mind that I can remember in my life. And you talking about, she's my mom's sister, amazing woman that she was like the thread of the family. She had never been on a plane. She didn't have a smartphone. She had her house phone, but she knows more about every grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great in the family. And she passed away. I went to see her on her deathbed. Actually, she called me the week before, and I was like, and I know she was very ill, close to death. And she said, I said, "Hey, Aunt Maud, how are you doing?" She says, "Hey, baby." She calls everybody baby, but
of course,
exactly up. This is 2 weeks before she passed away. She knew exactly who she was speaking with, so she kept her mind right up until the day she passed. And I'm calling to check on her, and she asked me this question. She said, "How are you doing? Because I heard y'all had bad weather in Atlanta."
Wow.
And so the week that she passed, I actually went to see her. She's laying in the bed, and I took a picture of her with my tablet, and she was like, "Let me see the picture," because she wanted to make sure she looked good in the picture. But you talk about, now, it was things I didn't know about her, like she was an amazing organist. But one time when I went home, this is probably maybe a year before she passed, we were all just having a good time at my sister Faye's house. And I was with my niece, who's an amazing musical prodigy, Miss LaPree Abe Michaela Unique Carol Fansler.
Yep, LaPree. Remember that.
LaPree. She can play all types of instruments. So she was playing the drums.
Okay. And
Auntie Maud was like, "Well, y'all didn't ask me if I could play the drums." And I never knew she could play the drums.
What?
This at the time, yes, she was, 100 plus years old, and she got on those drums, and I never heard anything. It was so amazing.
Are you serious?
Played them drums like you had never seen.
Oh my goodness!
And I fell on the floor. I said, "Emma, I never even knew you can play the drum." I know she played the organ. She could sing. You talk about a creative mind.
Sure.
And, I mean, to this day, between her and my dad, I don't know which one I think about the most, but I just think about all the things that they went through in their lives and how many stories they would have to tell and the way that they persevered and to have lived to, current day and the amazing personalities that they were, that, I would love to spend time with her, just continue picking her brain. She was known as the Duchess of Omaha because she was very famous about her hats.
Really?
Oh my goodness. We have a picture of her back when she was, I think, about 6 years old, maybe 7 or 8. And I always wondered where she got such a love for hats. But in this picture on the farm where she grew up with one of my grandfathers, she had a hat on. And when you look at the picture closely, it's not a hat. It's actually a potato sack.
No way.
But she had that sack styled up so tough that it looked like a hat. And I'm just like, now I know where she got the love of hats. She's been wearing hats her whole life. And the women in Omaha, they used to just couldn't wait for her to come into church to see what kind of hat she would have on.
What
So,
a wonderful story.
I mean, talk about a creative.
Yeah.
So,
And selection, that's, I didn't anticipate that you would, choose a family member, but that's you, Tim. Why should I not expect that? And a rich story to go with it. But I want to thank you for taking the time to sharing your story with us here at Jump School. Everyone, Jump School is all about taking the jump, jumping towards your dreams, your goals, your mindset, and doing those things that are important to you, but also that would empower you and enrich your lives. And I have to tell you, this has been one of the most enriching phone calls and conversations that I've had in my life. Tim, thank you so much. If there's anything that you would like to say to those listeners out there who are aspiring to maybe it be to join the military or to follow their dreams or to leave that small town, that we both from small towns, what would it be to that, one person out there who may be listening and even thinking that?
For your base of followers, and I would just say, this young man is such an amazing personality, and you can just, not only see it in the work that you're doing here in Jump School, but just, the years. I think back over the things that we talked about. We have so many stories we could tell, but, not enough time here. But, I think you set the example for all those young men out there that have a dream, have a passion, that want to follow, their goals, and don't let anything get in their way. It's like, I know some of those obstacles and tough times that you faced in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And I could say that I've never really had an opportunity to see where you let something defeat you or get you to a point where, you give up or you quit or don't put your 110% into it. So the thing I like to say, for a role model, for personality, for brother, friend, I really, can't say enough how much I love you, man. And I just would say to your followers, you're a force to be reckoned with, and they're going to hear a lot more about you. And I look forward to the big things that you're going to do in the future.
Well, you did it. You made me cry. You, Tim, you're a gentleman and a scholar. And, for those of you who are on the call, you can really see why I wanted so much to have Mr. Tim Jones to help everyone see some of my foundation, but also, one of the key people who have influenced me and helped shape me to become the man that I am. I thank you guys for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Jump School. Thank you, Tim.
All right. Thank you, sir.
If you want to see what I'm wearing on a day-to-day basis, check out my Instagram. There you'll find a ton of looks that maybe you can choose from, or at least get some inspiration. Hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if you have any questions or suggestions, leave it in the comments below. We'll see you next time.